Day 5 of Cleveland Browns training camp is in the books, and there is no slowing down the connection between Deshaun Watson and Elijah Moore. We have Sports Illustrated's Pete Smith in the house. We're going to break down Day 5 of training camp, maybe some thoughts. But the big one, tomorrow, pads go on. So you want to start talking defensive line, tomorrow's going to be the day where maybe we start to get a couple of answers. Your latest Locked On Browns starts now.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends, your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound LGB on the LOB, the Locked On Browns podcast, brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Appreciate everybody who makes Locked On Browns their first listen every single day. I suggest you join the everyday crowd, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Locked On Browns, always available, always free, wherever you get your podcasts. Your host, Jeff Lloyd, 7th season here with the Locked On Podcast Network, covering Locked On Browns. Very eager and excited here as we have training camp up and running. A few more practices down in West Virginia before the team commences their way back to Ohio. Joined today, Sports Illustrated Pete Smith. Pete, this has been something that's kind of been the theme thus far through the first 5 practices. And, Amari Cooper, and rest, and that's fine. It's helping others get acclimated. But Pete, the relationship, and if everybody remembers a few short years ago, obviously, during Elijah Moore's draft cycle, Pete and I were extremely excited about him. This was the guy we really thought just kind of had that juice. And at the time, obviously the Browns wide receiver room, was certainly lacking. Obviously, Donovan Peoples-Jones' progression, the addition of Amari Cooper. But one thing that's been evident, Pete, here through this first week down at the Greenbrier in West Virginia is Deshaun Watson and certainly Elijah Moore. And we talked about him coming in with the chip on his shoulder, everything that went on in New York. But whether he's using it as fuel or motivation, either way, whatever it is, Elijah Moore right now and Deshaun Watson got something special going on.
Yeah, I mean, look, Elijah Moore was exceptionally gifted coming out of Ole Miss. Just had a knack for getting open anywhere on the field. And that seemingly was still there for the Jets, and yet they couldn't find the ball. So the Browns trade what I think was not that much to get a player who could make a huge difference, fill in the perfect gap for what they needed offensively between somebody who can thrive out of the slot, somebody who offers speed, somebody who can create with the ball in their hands. And it's just a great fit in the fact that Deshaun Watson has been on the same page with him is certainly a good thing. Amari Cooper's tweak has just given them more opportunities to continue to work and build. And the Kevin Stefanski has moved him all around formation and found ways to get him the ball. So, I mean, look, this is all Elijah Moore ever wanted. So when you look and you go, well, he's sort of a malcontent. You look at how hard he works and how passionate he is about football, and you're sitting there going, it is unacceptable to be in his mind, I think, to be that effective, put in all that time and energy, and then just not get the ball when you're supposed to get the ball. So I think that will help him a great deal. And just the way that Kevin Stefanski has a knack for getting guys in good positions, I think it's a really good setup for both guys to have that connection and to be a huge part of this offense.
And, I think this is, Amari Cooper being out, and, we'll see. And, it seems maybe the way they keep saying days. So maybe we're not going to see Amari Cooper on the field again until the team gets back to Ohio. But look, for Donovan Peoples-Jones, a lot of his success last year was with Jacoby Brissett. So trying to get himself more acclimated with Deshaun Watson, certainly a big thing for him. Trying to find, just exactly how Elijah Moore is going to flourish for you. So this isn't necessarily a bad thing in any way that Amari, and they're patient. And look, the Browns are like this. Ken, you guys got to remember last year, there's guys who, practiced a little bit on Friday and still didn't play. Most NFL teams don't do that, man. If you got a pulse, they think you're remotely ready to go. They play you. The Browns are a little bit more cautious. If, hey, I'm ready to go today, Browns said, well, let's see where you're at tomorrow. Just the way they handle things and probably the way they should. But you had, obviously, Jalen Darden, and now there's this door possibly open with the Marquise Goodwin news, for a Jalen Darden. Obviously, Jakeem Grant, all of a sudden, maybe there's, a little rise, a little phoenix rising from the ashes here, an opportunity for him. Jordan Akins, an incredible catch today over, undrafted free agent Tanner McAllister. There was a lot of weapons here, Pete. And, Deshaun's found a way to pretty much get everybody involved and, to maybe hopefully shake this league-wide stink off that they just think that this player, based off of 6 games last year and a 20-month layoff, whatever, that this guy can still play the position. And we're not going to talk about the money because he doesn't really make that much money anymore compared to the rest of the quarterbacks in the league.
Well, look, I mean, I think with Kevin Stefanski at quarterback, or with head coach, any quarterback who's been willing to just sort of throw the open guy and just let the offense flow and take what the defense is given has been really effective. I mean, that was obviously Baker Mayfield playing at a super high level in 2020, was just getting the ball to dudes who were open. Rashard Higgins had the best year of his life just by throwing him the ball when he was supposed to. If Deshaun Watson is willing to be that guy and just spread it around to Cooper and Moore and Peoples-Jones and Njoku and Akins and some of these other guys, then he's probably going to have a hugely successful season. The biggest problems the Browns have ever had is when guys just insist on focusing on one target. And certainly there are games where you're going to have it where just that matchup is the one to continue to go to over and over and over again. But overall, it's just take what the defense gives you, trust that your playmakers are going to do what they do. And when that happens, the Browns offense was at its best, scored, averaged over 25 points a game, which is like, if you hit that mark historically, you're in the playoffs. That's all they need to do. If they can get that done, they're going to make the postseason.
And we'll get this in here because it's kind of quick here before we go to segment 2 here. But Pete, still, 5 practices in, and you'd mentioned maybe nothing was going to happen until we get back to Ohio. We're hearing good things on Jerome Ford. The defensive tackle position, obviously, we're not going to know more till the pads go on. But, with the loss of Winfrey, you still on that pattern, that trend here that maybe if they're going to make any of these veteran additions, it'll maybe be when the team is back at home, basically, at home base, so to speak.
Yeah, I think, I think part of the green, obviously they wanted to sell the Greenbrier as being a big team building thing. And I think if you were just sort of trying to sell the team building, but going about like normal roster transactions, it sort of takes a little bit of that, any idea that this is anything other than a cold hard business sort of out of it. I think the second they went to the Greenbrier, that was sort of it for roster transactions until they get back. And obviously pads is a big part of that because their efforts at the Greenbrier do feel like they just took the last week of OTAs and just moved them to this week.
True.
Because they aren't doing, super hard practices or anything like that. They're doing what amount to be walkthroughs and stuff. And I'm all for it until they have pads on and they really get to work, as long as those guys are ready to do it. But that's really when you're going to get your work done. I don't need to see guys just kill themselves with effort and stuff and potentially risk non-contact injuries with just helmets on. It's not going to be all that important. And certainly, look, we want Deshaun Watson to get as many reps as he can with his receivers, build that chemistry and get more comfortable. But there comes a point when you're just sort of like, we don't need to press. Let's take it not easy, but let's be productive and smart, stay healthy and until it matters, and then get going. And that's, they're going to be on the field and pads on Friday. But ultimately, it's a reasonable assumption that they're going to then potentially make roster moves when they get back for any number of reasons, not the least of which is just that's where their the business office stuff is when they want to do that. Or, I imagine they could get physicals done, but anywhere, but whatever. I think that's when they're going to continue to look at the roster. Obviously, I continue to hope that they're going to address defensive tackle. Running back's more of a question. It wouldn't surprise me if they let that play out a little while just to see what these guys can do, especially when you're looking at a guy like Demetric Felton, getting him some reps, and they're already talking about him getting reps in the preseason, which would at least suggest a Hall of Fame game. So that might be another benchmark for when running back comes up short of an injury.
Just quick other hits. Matthew Adams in a boot, going to be out for a little bit. Probably doesn't bode well for him here, as Jordan Kunasek is obviously, now already earned some praise from the defensive coordinator, as we know, also can play predominantly on special teams as well. Anthony Schwartz did return to practice today, so there's your latest as far as that goes. We're going to switch it up here a little bit more. 11 on 11, 7 on 7 today. It's getting chippy out there. I mean, and when you only get to go against your own teammates, yeah, you want to be smart, you want to be safe, but look, man, you're playing football, you're a football player. The battles are going to continue. Your latest Locked On Browns continues. Jeff Lloyd, joined by Sports Illustrated's Pete Smith. Our partners at eBay Motors have teamed up with Locked On Fantasy Football host Vinny Iyer to bring you some of the best fantasy picks each week, all season long. Whether you're prepping for a draft or scouting the waiver wire, every week we're going to provide you players that are guaranteed to fit on your roster. So with draft prep underway for the upcoming season, let's see who Vinny has picked out for us on this week's eBay's Guaranteed Fit Fantasy Players of the Week. When the top tier of quarterbacks is off the board in fantasy football drafts in 2023, there's another line of luxury passers and runners who are guaranteed to fit your starting lineups every week. One of them is the Bears' Justin Fields, who started rolling out of the garage last season and is bound to jump into the fast lane this season. This time, on top of his huge rushing total, Fields could deliver improved stats in the air with DJ Moore now leading Chicago's wide receiving core. Vinny Iyer from Locked On Fantasy Football is going to help you win your fantasy championship, and eBay Motors knows a championship team is about each other, each player being a perfect fit. Same with your vehicle. With eBay Guaranteed Fit and over 122 million parts and accessories for your vehicle right at your fingertips, you can make sure your ride stays running smoothly. Air filters, brakes, batteries, taillights, alternators, shocks, struts, you name it, eBay Motors has it. And they'll make sure it's the right fit for your car. Because eBay Guaranteed Fit helps you understand exactly what part you need for your vehicle the first time. So go forth, switch gears, crank the AC, and say goodbye to sweating if your ride needs a little fixing up. Because now you know you'll always be set for success from the get-go. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, everything your vehicle is calling for is just a click away. For the parts and accessories that fit your vehicle, just look for the green check. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices at ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers, eligible items only, exclusions apply. Continuing here, your latest Locked On Browns, your host, Jeff Lloyd, joined by Sports Illustrated's Pete Smith. We got in the beginning, look, the Watson more, look, and Watson just in general right now seems to be in a zone. But Pete, 11 on 11s, 7 on 7s, they got down to the goal line, more with a beautiful bar out pattern, was really, really smart, was staying on his plane, not drifting, was able to beat Denzel Ward for a touchdown. Denzel Ward comes back later, busts off a pass. Martin Emerson with a big jump of a slant that would have led to a would-be 97-yard touchdown. And this is huge for both the defensive backs and the wide receivers, because not a lot of teams have the luxury of having the talent, the depth at the wide receiver position, at the secondary position, where you can get legit game-like reps against legit talent. And this is something, and look, the wins and losses, and everybody's always going to get caught up, oh, well, the defense won this many, the offense won that many. These are really good, talented players, and this is one advantage this team has, where two positional groups both look to be extremely strong, and these guys can battle it out day after day after day, which, there's going to be weeks where you're going to go against teams with just inferior players at, the opposing position. So getting this out now, getting this work in now, it's big, and it's really, really a huge part of what Andrew Berry's put together in these two positional groups.
Well, the best case scenario is that the practice is more difficult than games. So the Browns have really strong DBs and what they hope is a really strong receiving core. You're going to have days, if it's a back and forth matchup, that's pretty good. I think there's certainly the potential for that. I think we've seen a little bit of that already. But if that's the case, and then they go into whether it's week one against the Bengals with their very talented receivers, or the Browns go against what is going to be a young secondary, that's either going to potentially prepare them for the difficulty of T. Higgins and the other dude, Jamar Chase. And then the flip side of that, the flip side of that is, the Browns have played receivers, gone up against a pretty talented secondary, talented safeties, and maybe that gives them the opportunity to take advantage of a lack of experience that the Bengals have, particularly on their back end. That's what you want. That's what you hope for. I would hope that the Browns, in some ways you see this a lot more in college football at super big time programs, where you're sitting there going, practice is way harder than anything we do on game day. So that, this feels easy. That would be great for the Browns. Obviously the NFL is a different animal and everybody's good to some extent, but like, if that's where they can get to, same thing with defensive line versus offensive line. If that D line is prepared because their offensive line is really good, great. Meanwhile, even if you're just focusing on, say, Jedrick Wills, he's going to get plenty of reps against talented guys. If that makes him better for the season, a pivotal season for him and the team in general, then that's going to be awesome. So that's where you want to be, and that's what makes it interesting to see what happens in training camp, because you're going to have some of these like anticipated matchups and stuff throughout camp.
Now, Pete, one thing, and we've talked about this forever with Denzel Ward. If the biggest threat is on the inside, then why not just put Denzel Ward on the inside? And you're starting to see some of this. And, with obviously Jim Schwartz, there have been some reps where Denzel Ward's going on the inside. And, I'm not sure if he's just trying to keep it folksy right now between all the corners, because most of those reps have come to Greg Newsome. But you're trying to, put together whatever can be your best 11 in whatever situation that comes. And, maybe it's a little easier now because Denzel's got the extension. He can play through this. But this is something we have always talked about. And we, if it comes to fruition, we'll see. But if he is that talented, if he is that good, if the threat, Cooper Kupp, those types of the world, if that's the threat and he's your number one corner, then why would it, necessarily change things all that much? If the number one threat is playing more on the inside and playing more in the slot, take who you feel is your best guy and go try to eliminate the threat that way.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how much this actually plays out in actual football, but that's a good example would be Cooper Kupp potentially. Is if you're just saying that Denzel Ward, he's your dude. If you're saying that, he's just going to follow Cooper Kupp the entire game, then that could easily see him on the inside. So at that point, he's got to get reps there at some, in some form or fashion to get him prepared for that. Beyond that, do I think it's going to be like a regular fixture? Probably not. I think it's more of a matchup thing. That's the advantage the Browns have with these corners is potentially between Denzel Ward, Greg Newsome, and Martin Emerson, just those three. Emerson is, more built to play bigger guys, and Denzel Ward's more built for smaller and quicker guys. And Greg Newsome, is blessed to have seemingly a little bit of everything between his length and his agility and raw speed. So it's worth considering. It's at least worth getting other teams to think about it. But yeah, I think Cooper Kupp's a great example. Maybe there's other guys where maybe Deontay Johnson or somebody like that, where you're sitting there going, we want to be able to have Denzel Ward follow a guy the entire game with the amount of man they want to play or situationally, whatever, and make sure we have the preparation to be able to go to that when called upon.
And look, there are other scenarios where you could make it for the other guys to go inside as well. I mean, Deebo Samuel is going to be a guy this team plays this year. And if you feel Martin Emerson is the best situation, the best matchup for that, maybe that's something that they can work, obviously use to their advantage as well. And, look, I mean, you're all just, right now, I mean, just trying to put things out there. And a lot of it is, hey, let's just try this because I want to see how it looks. I want to see how it works. And it could be something Jim Schwartz looks at and says, you know what, never mind. Let's not even bother. Okay, you know what? I gave it the look. I wanted to see how it looks. I hated how it looked. And we're just going to move on and continue, the way things are. But, this is why you have this time. This is why you get to do what you are doing. We're going to get it over here. Now we're going to go to segment 3 here. Pads go on tomorrow. And this is really, look, everything up until this point is gravy. It really is. But once it's, mono, pads are on, mouthpieces are in, helmets are strapped up. It's a whole different animal. And there's a lot of what you fans are waiting to hear about and waiting to see. And you will get that opportunity once the pads go on. Jeff Lloyd, Pete Smith, your latest Locked On Browns. Segment 3, welcome back. Appreciate everybody who makes Locked On Browns their first listen every single day. Join the everyday crowd. Make sure you subscribe to the Locked On Browns YouTube channel. Locked On Browns, always available, always free, wherever you get your podcasts. Pete, there's obviously, and this goes along to the whole point of this, is haven't seen much of the running game. We don't know much about Jerome 4 through 5 practices. Screen game, haven't seen much there. We've got a bunch of young players at the edge position. Haven't really heard much from them. We don't really know much about the defensive tackle position. Well, that mountain starts to get climbed tomorrow. That all starts to change tomorrow. Pads are on, and this is a whole different beast. And this is where, the nice respect thing right now between the big guys is there. And they will be cordial about each other's safety starting tomorrow. But it's a whole different animal because when pads are on, it's just a whole different mentality. And this is basically when it comes from, hey, we're all friends. We all like each other. We're teammates. But I'm not going to get embarrassed. So pads are on tomorrow.
Well, it's real football. I mean, up until this point, 7-on-7s and all the other stuff, it's fake. I mean, it's useful. It's valuable in terms of preparing for the season, everything, technique and all those things, details. But when the pads come on, it's real football, and that's when depth charts actually start moving for real. Guys who look great in shorts, can they then hold up when pads come on? Elijah Moore is a good example. I mean, he's had a phenomenal offseason at this point. Does that continue? I don't have any reason to doubt it will, but confirmation is helpful. And the other part of that is
he's going to get jammed
Deshaun Watson.
People are going to get hands on him a little bit more.
And Deshaun Watson has that's the question for him. How does he respond now dealing with pressure? Obviously, there's an image left from those last 6 games and how poorly he played. And obviously it's really difficult for him to play much worse, but it's now how much better is he? Is he to what percentage of 2020 Deshaun Watson is he at this point? And if he thrives in that environment when pressure's there, even if they're, obviously non-contact and all that, but it's still there, they can still knock down passes. He's still got to feel his way around and get prepared. And what does that change for him? So defensive line, obviously, this becomes big. This is the unit to evaluate for that defense. Certainly the secondary is important. They've done a lot of things there, but it's all about the defensive line, making sure that they are everything that they can be, especially with Jim Schwartz. And what that does to Watson, what that does to the offense in general, and just how good this defense can be.
And, look, for all these guys, I mean, maybe there might be a step up for you just because you're getting a guy who works so well with defensive linemen. Now, who's going to seize that opportunity? Who's going to seize that advantage? Who's going to seize the fact, that you may be taking just a basic class, but, you get a professor who is, should be teaching graduate courses on it, just how somehow stumbled on the assignment of teaching this class. There's the opportunity there for all of these guys. And, we thought maybe this would be something that would help a guy like Perrion Winfrey, but, you can't help stupid, obviously. But there's a big opportunity for these guys there. Pete, anything to this point that it maybe has caught your eye? For me, like one of them is Jakeem Grant, and you just see a couple little things, and it was like, well, here's a guy they really thought could maybe be something. And granted, it was 1 year ago, and obviously an Achilles injury later. But with that open door with Goodwin, and for Marquise Goodwin, obviously all thoughts and prayers are that everything works out well for him. But this does kind of create that opening, and are they going to keep 4 running backs? Because if they don't, then they could possibly keep a 7th receiver. There's definitely, some scenarios here that are still being worked through.
Sure. I don't know about the 4 running backs. Or I should say, I don't know about 7.
Well, I mean, think about it. I mean, what other running? I mean,
No.
Besides Chubb, besides Ford, he'd be like, well, are we keeping him for the sake of keeping him?
Yeah, no. I
besides your guy,
more along the lines of 7 receivers is a lot of receivers. But the thing that sticks out to me is just the way Deshaun Watson is talking compared to last year. Last year, it was a lot of process oriented, trying to, talking about what he needs to accomplish. This year, he's talking about in terms of being more confident, being ready to go. I think he just sounds like a player who's certainly more comfortable with who he is in his role. And I think that's a big difference. Obviously, again, pads are going to tell the tale on that, but that's a noticeable difference from last year where, he was trying to put his best foot forward, but also acknowledge the real challenges he was facing. And that's
it almost seems kind of like there was like a slight gag order type of thing. Like, just answer the question the way it's given to you. And, we'll see where we're at. Obviously, there's a little bit of a penance to serve here, and maybe it's a little changed.
Well, I think he gave a lot of good insight. I think he's pretty open from a football standpoint. I think he's pretty open with what he thinks and sees and feels. And last year, he was very open about how difficult it was and all these things that he was dealing with. Like I said, I think this year he sounds more confident. I think he sounds more prepared. I think and part of that, I think, is as a result of he gets to go back and watch those 6 games and realize, oh, my feet weren't very good, or I just wasn't. Maybe I thought I was more prepared than I was, and this gives you sort of a reality check. And I think he feels just more ready to go, more confident, and I think that's important. Obviously, it's got to carry over, but he sounds like a different dude this year in terms of just the football portion. I clarify very specifically the football portion.
Of course. And, some of that does obviously have to do with the fact that it's, a year removed from everything. And obviously, a year in, well, not even a year, but obviously within the system longer, within the city longer, within the franchise longer, around the coaches longer. And, this obviously, should pay the dividends. This is what, the whole acquisition was about, understanding that it was basically going to be delayed 1 year while you waited to get to this point. But now hopefully all bets are out. Joe Burrow, look, they're saying it's a calf strain to this point. First things first, nobody, it's not the way anybody wants, anything to happen. So hopefully for Joe Burrow, it is not a big deal. If you're going to take down basically, David versus Goliath, you want to take him down. You want to take down all of it. You want to have, the fight versus the fight. You don't want to walk away with, cheap W. So, for Joe Burrow, and one thing real quick, Joe Burrow, I am not stepping back on a practice field for the Cincinnati Bengals until I have my contract, because today could have been a really, really scary thing. So guess what? Pay me before you expect me to show back up on this practice field. He is Pete Smith, Browns Digest. Pete does a fantastic job over there. Him and his team just crushing content on the daily. Make sure you check everything out. Browns Digest, SportsIllustrated.com. Make sure you're following @_Pete Smith_. Your host, Jeff Lloyd, at Jeff_LJ_Lloyd. And the show itself at Locked On Browns. Appreciate everybody who makes Locked On Browns their first listen every single day. Make sure you join the everyday crowd. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Wherever you get your podcasts, Locked On Browns is always available, always free. This has been your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound. LGB on the LOB. Let's go Browns.